Born in 1647, Maria Sibylla Merian was well known for her art and science fusion. She was the stepdaughter of Jacob Morel, a former still life painter, and she came from a wealthy family. She lived in Frankfurt, Nuremberg, Amsterdam, and Suriname. She was married for a period of time to Johann Andres Graaf before divorcing him, and she was well known for giving classes to other women and being able to create a wide women network in which it's highlighted Agnes Block.
During the first period of her life, she lived in Nuremberg, where she moved to with her family once she got married. In this city, she continued painting, dealing with linen and parchment, and designing embroidery. We can see the influence from his father in the way she depicted plants and decorated them with insects, as well as in the religious symbolisms and metaphors. She offered drawing and embroidery classes, what provided her access to the finest gardens and helped her financially. She had to return to Frankfurt to take care of her mother, and 4 years later, she moved with her two daughters to the Lebanese community. When she was just 28 years old, she published her first book. Merian was described as a theistic naturalist, capable of not mixing the religious dogma with scientific facts. When she got divorced, she moved to Amsterdam with her daughters. Up until this point, her drawings had been focused on plants, mainly in tulips, which she decorated with insects, avoiding blank backgrounds and giving the drawings artistic aspects. However, her drawings rapidly acquired a clear scientific purpose, representing plants and animals as a whole. In this period, she became friends with Agnes Block and created the art piece The Pineapple. In 1699, she was sponsored to travel to Suriname, where she stayed for 2 years sketching local animals and plants. Once in Suriname, her works became centered in morphoses, although she still included plants. She would study native plants and animals, noting their local names and uses. When she returned, she published her most famous work, The Metamorphosis Insectorum Surinamensium.
Maria Sibylla Merian lived in a time in which art, commerce, and science were linked in a way never seen afterwards. For understanding how the society in which she lived was, it's important to first explain a bit how was life in Amsterdam at that time. After achieving independence from the Spanish, Amsterdam's aim was to develop commerce, and so that, in 1609, the Amsterdam's Bank was created imitating the Venetian, and this event would be the turning point as the city was about to become the financial center and the most important commercial center of the Western world. So that, as we can see, the context in which Merian moved to Amsterdam was one in which the city was worldwide known, and commerce was enriching to the aristocracy and merchants, who were also interested in representing and showing off their wealthiness. For this reason, it's also a period of great artistic creation. This period is known as the Dutch Golden Age. Talking about Merian's circle, it's important to mention her relation with Agnes Block. Agnes was a botanist and collector who patronizes artists to help her in representing the strange and exotic plants and insects she had in her garden. As many other aristocrats did, for example, with the famous Cabinet of Curiosité, Agnes collected exotic plants and seeds and created her own tropical garden, achieving great recognition. Continuing with Agnes, one of her main and widely known achievements was obtaining the first pineapple ever grown in Europe, something really important as the pineapples in the epoch were a precious item of the American-European trade but had never been cultivated in Europe before. Its importance can be seen even in many portraits of Agnes' family, in which the pineapple plays an important role in the composition. One example can be seen in the one we are presenting, Agnes Block's Zebra and the Flyers and Two Children by the artist Jan Weenix. On it we can see that the whole composition is oriented towards the little pineapple, that is represented on its stem. You can see the pineapple at the bottom left of the picture, and it's really little, but you can see its character pointing out, or like their bodies are towards the little pineapple. Maria Sibylla represented in many occasions Agnes' pineapple, but it's also important to mention the representation of pineapple in her most famous book, Metamorphosis Insectorum Surinamensis. It's quite interesting not only because of the pineapple itself, but because of the way she represents it. In other plates of the book, the focus is on insects and on the metamorphose, and in the fruits and plants are represented in the background. However, when we look at the representation of the pineapple on Sibylla's work, we see that the fruit is in the center, rather than the cockroach of butterflies that are implied in the title of the painting. The representations are made to impress, and this can easily be explained if we consider how trendy was the pineapple in the context Sibylla wanted to sell her book. For the Europeans, the pineapple meant wealth, but it also was the representation of the exotic and colorful New World. It was an inaccessible item for the majority of the population, but it was desired, as it represented the richness of transatlantic commerce and the status everyone wanted to attain in those centuries. For this reason, it's why Agnes Block is often represented with her pineapple. It is an example, indeed, of how a traveling object like the pineapple is transformed into a leitmotif in the European imaginary, thanks also to the representation and importance given to it in paintings.
Maria Sibylla Merian was a very interesting woman that would stand out not only for her good taste in painting, but for her individual and unusual actions that she did in her lifetime. There are several factors at the time that favored her artistic and naturalist future. Firstly, she was born in a family of artists, and she received support from them. Furthermore, she married a famous painter that would not care about her painting activities. Thirdly, she was part of a middle class who could afford studying, painting, and traveling. Adding to that the fact that she had contact with the silk industry and its commerce because of the place where she was born. But what most encouraged her for her actions and work was the Labarist commune in which she lived, a group that believed in equality of sexes, in divorce, and in women's emancipation. Nevertheless, we cannot state that for a woman artist in the 15th century it was easy to live, create, and not being criticized or ignored. She differed from the rest of women artists as she did not follow her parental example of continuing the father's artistic career. In addition, most women that had interest in art, especially painting, would stop doing it when they got married, but Merian did not. She separated from her husband and adopted her maiden name and surname, a very unusual thing then. Furthermore, the encounter with Agnes Block and with other middle-class women would be an incentive to encourage and motivate between them for involving in unusual activities and lifestyles. Regarding her work, she had to deal with two big problems. The first one was regarding the book's price, so she had to continue giving classes afterwards she returned Suriname, as she financed herself the travel and the publication of her book. Secondly, it is the fact that many naturalists and scientists did not recognize it as a science work, as it was published in German instead of Latin, the official language. However, her book was so complete with a unique perspective and an accurate study and representation of it that Wood gave her recognition around Europe and a well-deserved position in art and entomology.
Understanding the legacy of Maria Sibylla Merian and the interconnectedness of her science and art asks for a mandatory reminder on her family's keen interest in drawing, engraving, painting, and theatricals, which suggests artistic predisposition from a very early stage in life. We could even speculate, by the look of her own words, how such an artistic imprint was important in relation to her early fascination with caterpillars. Her work is a tool playing along the lines of a researcher, and her input regarding a systemic approach to a natural analytical representation allow the receivers of her creation to draw bridges of connections between them and contemporaneity. For example, faunal and floral documentaries are footages that are unique in their ways of capturing the most elusive scientific phenomena while heavily relying on the merging of scientific and technological knowledge, computer science, and the artistic realm. Therefore, it is shown how compulsory it is to trace back to the roots of these somewhat overlooked links, to be able to detach ourselves from wide modern generalizations and the constant alienation and isolation of women artists and scientists in the system. Her visions allowed for a rearrangement of communication channels and the creation of new pathways, that through the expansion of technology and globalization of the past couple of decades can be found and reimagined in a plethora of new approaches. Supporting such a thesis, the Renaissance footprint of Sibylla's art science and the media production and expression, mobile digital tech, overlap in the aforementioned genesis and transformation of art within science.